Born in Germany in 1920, Eddie Jaku's life was filled with the promise of a bright future. But everything changed with the rise of the Nazi regime. Eddie was just 20 years old when he was arrested for being a Jew. He was imprisoned, spending time in multiple concentration camps, including Auschwitz. He endured unimaginable suffering, including the loss of his family, and experienced the darkest sides of humanity. Yet, against all odds, Eddie managed to survive. After the war, he immigrated to Australia, where he built a new life. His story is a testament to the human spirit's incredible resilience. He gained the respect of his community as he embraced his passion for helping others. He was an advocate for peace, a beacon of hope and positivity, and a true inspiration to everyone he met.
The Happiest Man on Earth is much more than a survival story. It's a guide to living a life full of joy and gratitude despite hardships. Eddie emphasizes the importance of kindness, the power of forgiveness, and the value of maintaining a positive outlook, even when faced with the greatest of challenges. Sharing his story with the world at the age of 100, he reflects on how his suffering shaped his perspective, teaching him that happiness comes from within and is largely about how we choose to view the world and interact with others. Welcome to the Book Barn Book Club.
In today's episode, we'll discuss our August book club selections. We chose to read two powerful memoirs, both with unique messages of hope.
And we also have Angela back in the book barn. First, we'll have a little candid conversation with Angela, and then we'll all share a few thoughts on a remarkable book.
So welcome to the book barn, Angela.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's your second time here.
It is.
Well, we're going to start off by asking a few questions. So, can you tell us about yourself?
Sure. I'm married. My husband works for the local electric company. We have 4 kids, 2 of which are out of the house that we've raised, and they're kind of off doing their own thing. One is actually exciting. She started her first year of teaching this year. Yay. She became a teacher, so same as mom. My second daughter is at K-State still. She's in finance and loving it. We have a freshman in high school, our daughter Reagan. She is actually, this morning we were at her volleyball scrimmage and that, so she's playing volleyball. She's a cheerleader. And then we have Greg, who is a 6th grader and actually in my class this year. So that's a little bit different for mom. And I told him he has the best year ever. And he said, I only see you for 55 minutes, mom. So, okay. Yep. My life revolves around their schedules.
Can you tell us maybe what one day in the life of Angela would look like?
If I'm going with a summer day, since we just finished summer, it starts off early and depending on the weather, of course, because if it's going to be super hot out, it kind of changes things. But typically I would make sure Reagan was up and around and ready for weights and get her to all of her conditioning and her summer practices and camps and all that kind of stuff. And then we have, of course, livestock, show stock. So we come back and do chores and get everybody going there. Then it just kind of depends. If it's a day we have 4-H activities, then we're going to fairs, and those are usually really packed. So then in the afternoon, sometimes we have a little downtime in the afternoon when it's super hot out, but then by evening, it's either ball games or, back to doing chores and walking lambs. We do that a lot. So that's kind of nice exercise for us too. But yeah, so following kids with livestock and sports and stuff in the summertime. School year actually slows down. It's kind of nice. We just get up and do chores and get ready and go to school and then do sporting stuff and come home to chores. But it's a little bit different routine than summer, which changes pretty much every day.
Doesn't it sound fun, but it also sounds exhausting.
Exhausting, yes. So I have a question about that. We know that you're an avid reader, but where do you find time to read?
So reading is kind of my bedtime, depending on if I fall asleep while I'm reading, but anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour in bed, because that is kind of my relaxation, let my mind go, stop worrying about everything that's going on in the daytime, and just kind of relax.
Gotcha.
And then the other place that I read all the time is I can't tell you how many times I sit in parking lots waiting on a kid.
Yeah.
And it's nice. I just carry my Kindle with me, which is on my phone actually. And so I might read for 10 minutes here and there. And yeah, but bedtime is really every night. That's my unwinding. That's my time to relax.
Yeah, nice routine there.
Yeah.
So now all of our readers, you have no excuse.
That's right.
For not reading. If Angela can read with her schedule, you can too.
Yeah.
Okay, this is kind of a quirky question, but what if you could display one sentence in the sky? What would you say?
That is a very good question. And be kind. I know it's kind of cliche or whatever, but I've gone through 3 teenage girls especially, and just, I don't know, that's kind of our phrase, like, be kind. Or the other one that I tell my kids a lot is give it some grace.
I told Laisha before you got here that right now, if I had a message in the sky, it would probably say, listen to our podcast and share it with a friend.
Yes.
And be kind.
That's right.
Give us some grace.
So do you have an all-time favorite book?
This actually came up in my classroom yesterday too. I have an all-time favorite book, which is actually a children's book. The Watsons Go to Birmingham, 1963. I know, Lainey, you do it with your 4th graders. I used to do it just as a read aloud with 3rd grade and that. But it's one of those books that I always go back to because of the message in it and the times and the humor and just, so yeah, that's one of my favorite. Then I don't know that I have a lot of other favorite books, but I have favorite authors. So every time I read a lot of romance because it has a happy ending, and I read at bed trying to get away from some of the, stress of the day. And so it's nice to read something that is going to have a happy ending. And so Susan Mallory and, oh gosh, I just blanked out on the other name, but some of those authors are more who I read, and I just read a lot of their works.
Would you rather travel to the past or to the future?
For sure the future, because I can't wait to see the impact and the life that my children and the children that I touch in my classroom, I want to see what they become and see their futures in that. And just, as my kids have gotten older, that's been the greatest thing, is to see how they turn out and just how they find their own happiness.
I love it.
I just got goosebumps.
Do you have a bucket list?
I have a list of places I want to travel. That's really probably what my bucket list is. Niagara Falls, Hawaii, Italy, and of course 2 of the 3 that I just named my husband's already been, so he always gives me a hard time, and he's like, oh, I've already been there. I'm like, oh, you're going to go back again.
Yeah, you're going to take me there now.
Exactly.
Do you kill bugs or do you let them go?
Most of them I let them go. I hate June bugs with a passion. I had older brothers that used to torture me with them. So June bugs, I can't stand those. But beyond that, bugs don't particularly bother me. Spiders especially, obviously stay away from the poisonous ones, whatever. But we have those beautiful garden orb spiders, and we have them in our barns and that. And we love watching them. My kids name them. They become just part of the barn. Yes. Yes. Let's see. I think one is maybe Meggie right now, and I don't remember the name of the other one. But bugs don't bother me.
Okay, one last question. What do you wish that you would have learned sooner?
Oh,
it's a deep one, huh?
What do I wish I would have learned sooner? To accept myself as I am.
Oh.
I think that's probably, and I'm still working on that. Yeah. It's not like I'm there yet, but just the older I get, the more I realize it's okay. It's okay to be me. And
that's a good one.
Very good. Yeah. Our first powerful memoir is The Happiest Man on Earth by Eddie Jaku.
Yeah, I liked the book. It was really good. It wasn't quite what I was expecting when I originally saw the book.
So what were you thinking the book might be about?
I guess I thought it would be more him giving a little more self-help, if that makes sense, more than his story and how it applied. Just not what I was expecting, but the book was really, really good.
I loved it.
I did too.
One of the things they talked about throughout the book was that there are so many more valuable things than money. And that really kind of made me think. I remember my mom had a neighbor. She would always tell me how rich I was. And obviously she did not mean money. She just meant because I had a healthy family.
Well, and at various times in his life, they did have wealth and money. Then they had none. So he did also kind of see both sides of that when you have enough money and you have wealth to live comfortably versus then, of course, when it's all taken away and you have nothing and you truly see the things that you value.
So in chapter 5, he had already been through several concentration camps and escapes, and he is living with his family in the attic of a boarding house, kind of in hiding. He has 2 aunts there for a little while who actually end up being captured and killed. The aunts do. And he finds Kurt again, his friend who kept coming in and out of his life in just some amazing ways. But Kurt was there also. They're in Brussels at this time. So they're in hiding. They didn't even have a restroom, a bathroom in their little apartment. Their 2 rooms that they used to live in. So they had to sneak downstairs at night to use the bathroom. And he said, sometimes now when I'm lying in my bed at night, I look back and think that this was the best time of my life. I cherish this time with my whole family together in the attic. That really got me.
Yes. And that is powerful.
Yes.
As a Holocaust survivor, I was kind of shocked that he had gone to so many different camps. In my mind, I thought,
once you went to one, you were there. Yeah, I thought that was interesting as well. But just his level of education and his level of intelligence, I think he was useful to them in other places, and they took advantage of that. And, speaking of that, that was another thing that stood out to me was when he mentioned how many scientists and doctors and could we have cured cancer by now if this hadn't happened and those people were alive and finished their work.
And I'll tell you, with the education part, that's what saved him so many times because he was valuable to the German population.
Yes.
He was a machinist and a tool maker. And my husband did that work for a while too. So I kind of connected with that part.
So what did you think of the author's voice and style? Did the quality of the writing match the story?
It did. So I usually only read books. I don't typically do audiobooks. And it just happened that we were getting ready for a livestock show and we were out shearing lambs and getting everything ready. And I listened to your podcast. Then I made it through those episodes and I was like, I'm just going to start listening to the book. And listening to the beginning in the audio with the voice and the accent. And then even, because after that, then I finished it, reading it, but I still had that person's voice. So then it just lent itself to, that was to me what the author sounded like. And it all fit.
Yeah. So Eddie was 100 years old when he wrote this. And he really felt like he needed to get his message out there, that people needed to learn what happened.
Yes. And not forget.
Absolutely.
We need to teach history. We need to learn history because there's so many things that we don't want them repeated. But if we pretend that they didn't happen, then they are bound to happen again. So I thought it was interesting. He was a lot older before he was able to tell his story again, which totally makes sense with all the trauma and everything that he went through. He even mentioned that there's now people that deny it even happened. Can you imagine going through all that and then people to say, oh, that didn't happen to you?
No.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, he was so traumatized that even his children didn't know about his history.
They didn't know the whole story.
They didn't know all of the details. And it wasn't until his son had came into a presentation that he was doing and hid his first time telling one of his children.
And when he mentioned that his seeing his oldest son made him think of his father, looked a lot like his father. So brings all the memories of what happened. And I don't know, that would be hard.
Yeah, so hard. Laisha, I know you had a favorite part of this book.
Well, goodness, I feel like I had so many now that I'm thinking, trying to pick one out. Did you have anything that really stood out to you, Angela?
There were different places. You mentioned the ants earlier. For some reason, that stuck out to me about they went out and they were captured and that they just killed them on the train.
On the train.
Just put all these people on there and
sealed them in a tunnel.
Yes,
and gassed them.
And why?
Everyone,
Why?
man, woman, and child, everyone that was on that train.
I mean, they were spared being sent to a concentration camp, but wow, why?
Yeah.
And we don't have any idea why,
No.
but that was one. And then at the very end, there are pictures, and seeing the pictures of him with his kids and his grandkids, and just the way he was at the end where he was like, I just want you to know my love. I just want you to know you're loved.
I missed that because I listened on audio.
Oh,
And so I wish I had seen those pictures.
One of my favorite parts was his escape from a train. Do you remember that? He had found some tools and hid them in his pocket, and he worked at getting those floorboards up, and he got all of the screws out and then realized that they were tongue and groove, and so he had to chip away at that to get a small little opening. I wanted to read that paragraph. This is also from chapter 5, so if anyone's interested in finding it. 9 of us, those who were very skinny, desperately wriggled through the hole in the floor and escaped. We crawled through like spiders, clinging to the bottom of the train car. I hung with my fingertips for dear life until I could tell from the motion of the train and the lights visible up ahead that we were close enough to entering Strasbourg, where we would surely be captured. I yelled for the others to let go, and we dropped onto the railway tracks, lying as flat as we could against the sleepers. We covered our heads with our hands as the train roared overhead, aware that the loose chains on the bottom of the carriages could have caught us and split our skulls like melons. Then the train was gone, and the open sky was above my head. And then they all fled in different directions, and he said that he never saw any of those people again.
I don't know that we can do the book justice because it was so powerful.
No.
And even the time that he was helped to escape, but he was in the prison clothes and
The barrel, yes, he was in the barrel
Yes.
on the back of a truck.
Yes, he was able to roll it off basically in that. But then when he tried to get help and they saw him in that,
They shot him.
yeah, and he had to flee. And then having the friend who was able to cauterize that and remove the bullet with their limited supplies, just
The fact that he had to sneak back into
the
the
prison.
he had
camp.
no choice. Yes.
Yeah. There were so many powerful quotes in the book that I, wrote down, like things, one of the ones I wrote was, if you lose your morals, you lose yourself.
Yes.
Aren't those words to live by? For every cruel person in the world, there is a kind one. I thought that was good.
I marked that one.
And then I really loved the part where he talked about how the human body was the best machine ever put on earth. So those were things I wrote down.
And one quote that I had is, life is what you want it to be. Life is in your hands. You know happiness doesn't fall from the sky. It's in your hands. You want to be happy? You can be happy.
That's words for all of us to live by.
Absolutely.
So, Laisha, earlier on, you told me before we recorded that you wanted to kind of talk about a word that summed up the book.
Yes.
Have you thought of a word?
I think my word for this book is survival.
Is there a word that you think of when you think of this book, Angela?
I think probably overcome.
I like that. I chose resilience.
All along the same lines.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And of course, we can't forget happiness.
Happiness.
But that was something, and I think maybe this goes along with what you were saying. It wasn't exactly what you expected because the title is The Happiest Man on Earth. But he was already married, and he states, I wasn't a happy man. And
That his children made him happy.
his children made him happy, yes.
At the birth of his oldest son, he realized that he had a choice.
Yep.
He could choose to be happy and choose to raise them in a different world.
Right.
It's a great book. I loved it.
Me too. It was good.
Me too.
The Happiest Man on Earth. In The Sun Does Shine, Anthony Ray Hinton tells his powerful and moving story of wrongful conviction and redemption. Hinton, who spent nearly 30 years on death row in Alabama, shares his harrowing journey from being sentenced to death for murders he didn't commit to his eventual exoneration.
The book explores themes of justice, resilience, and the power of forgiveness, highlighting the flaws in the American criminal justice system and the profound impact of one man's fight for truth.
Hinton's narrative is a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the belief that, no matter how dark the times, the sun does shine and justice can prevail.
So this was an instant New York Times bestseller, Lainey. Did you like it?
I did like it a lot.
I did too, and I learned some things.
I did as well. I learned a little bit about the court system, learned a little bit about the prisons and how they're ran.
And did you know that Alabama still has the death penalty?
I did not know that.
They do. Still, for 2024, Alabama executed more people than any other state, including Texas, which has a population 5 times larger than Alabama.
That's crazy.
It is. It's kind of unbelievable. All right. This book is about Anthony Ray Hinton. He is known as Ray, and Ray was raised in the South.
He was.
And he had those Southern values, family, faith, and food.
And he loved his mama.
He sure did.
Very athletic as a young man.
Yeah. Oh, I have a quote here that his mama told him about baseball. If you have a tantrum on the field and let the other team know they've upset you, it's like losing twice.
Ooh, I like that. Good job, Mama. I think more mamas need to tell their kids that. We know that Ray dreamed big and he loved beautiful women, and that got him in a lot of trouble.
It did. Especially when he liked to date sisters and someone else's girlfriend.
Yeah, not a good idea. He actually stole a car.
Yeah, that surprised me.
It did me too.
Disappointed me.
Just showed up at the car lot, took the car for a little
test drive,
supposedly, but just never brought it back.
Yeah, he said he just felt so good driving that car. It didn't mean anything to just drive it on home.
Of course, Mama thought he bought it.
Yeah. Drove her around for 2 years before
crazy.
I think his conscience finally got to him, and he admitted to her what he had done, and she told him to take it back and turn himself in. And that's what he did.
He did. I wonder if that's one of the reasons why his name was on the police's list when they were looking for a suspect.
I imagine. Yeah. So there were some murders in his area, and one of these nights we do know that he was at work.
Absolutely could not have been him.
Couldn't have, because they had to check in at work. They locked the doors behind him. It was surrounded by tall fences with razor wire, and, he didn't have any way to get in or out. He was there, and he had that rock solid alibi, and they didn't believe him.
Or they chose to ignore that.
Yeah.
I think that was probably the case.
They came in and took his mama's gun, and he knew that gun hadn't been fired for years, and they were saying that gun matched the bullets.
Yes, and there's just no way that it did.
And they had hired this ballistics expert who didn't seem perhaps the most competent, and they were able to get that thrown out.
It's almost like they just wanted to pin it on him.
Yeah. Well, he described it as a lynching.
Yes.
He was a young black man in Alabama.
They were trying to pin these murders on him, even if they didn't think he was the guy.
Right.
He even had a quote-unquote friend, Reggie. Well, he gave the police Anthony's name. But we find out that he was also mad because Ray had dated Reggie's girl.
Yeah. Essentially, Reggie was paid off for his testimony, too.
Yeah. So in court, Anthony actually told the jury that he knew that if he died, that he'd be going to heaven. So that was basically him saying, I'm not guilty. I did not do this.
Right.
Yeah. And he went to prison for a long time. And it took a long time for him to get good representation.
12 years.
Took 12 years.
He had been on death row for 12 years before he found Bryan Stevenson, who was truly working for him and helping him. He did his job.
He did. He did. It really makes you think how many other people have been convicted of crimes that they didn't do and didn't get the representation they deserved. That's the way I felt while reading this.
But his best friend Lester was there by his side through the whole entire thing. Every week his mama and Lester came to visit him until his mama didn't feel so good anymore. Yeah. And he said that she started coming less and less frequently, that the drive was just too much for her.
I did love that while Ray was in prison, that he educated himself and even started a book club.
A book club,
See,
yes.
You can be anywhere.
So this reminded me a little bit of Shawshank Redemption.
Ooh.
I know that Ray's story was a true story, but it had a lot of similarities in there. They weren't on death row. It was actually a combination for me of Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile, because The Green Mile is death row, and Shawshank Redemption had the library, and an educated man gained the respect of the guards. And
yes, I see that.
I saw that there were a lot of similarities, and I actually had to go back and look at some dates to see if maybe anything was, Stephen King's inspiration.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
So one of the quotes I wrote down about Ray being in prison is he said, "Some nights are just made for crying," but he also had dreams about pretty women like Halle Berry. Of course, he had to divorce her because he married Sandra Bullock. Did you like that part? I thought it was hysterical.
It was pretty funny, yeah. And then later on, he had to divorce Sandra for Kim Kardashian.
Yep, he liked his women. 30 years, Laisha. That's a long time.
I can't even imagine.
I can't either. And he loved his mama so much, and there came a point where she couldn't even come and see him. Eventually, she died before he was released. And so he never got to live with his mama again.
Yeah, that was so heartbreaking.
It really was.
So when we come to the end of the book, Lainey, he has a few quotes that I thought were very powerful. He says that he was a curiosity, but also a voice. And he also mentions that he does believe in punishment, but he doesn't believe in useless punishment. And at the very end, he says that he calls someone every night to say goodnight. Do you remember why?
I do not.
Because he needs an alibi for every day of his life.
Oh, darn.
Yeah.
I recommend it. It's a good one. The Sun Does Shine and How I Found Life and Freedom on Death Row by Anthony Ray Hinton. And another similar book to that would be Just Mercy. I recommend that one as well.
Lainey, what an emotional ride we've been on with these two books.
The Happiest Man on Earth and The Sun Does Shine.
Both are the type that just stay with you long after you've finished them.
Oh, for sure.
A big thank you to all our listeners for joining us today.
And remember, if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share the podcast with your book-loving friends.
We've got some exciting books lined up for the next few episodes. We really love sharing this journey with all of you. So until next time, I'm Laisha.
And I'm Lainey. And keep your bookmarks bouncing.